Hey buddy, it's Carm here. Got the producer here with me, Fuzzy. Back on a Thursday evening. Hope you're all doing well under the circumstances of the time. Doing fine here, just staying occupied, doing some spring cleaning and just general organizing, going through the collection, trying to get a little semblance of order, little by little. But yeah, as ever, doing a lot of revisiting, and I'll start right in with what I have here. Vangelis Papathanasiou, or Vangelis is the proper pronunciation. Pronouncing it the other way for about 30 years, so it's kind of hard to break that old habit. But there's a great artist here, his natural habitat. I think he recently had a birthday, 77th birthday. I think Derek showed his spiral earlier today. This "Can You Hear the Dogs Barking" from 1975. Original soundtrack recording in 2 parts. If you've seen the album Ignacio, which I think was released a year or 2 later, it's the same music. I think the cover on that one has a bird in flight. It's the same music. I have the CD of Ignacio, and it's one long piece, about 40 minutes. So here's the label here. Bellophone. Very beautiful solo album of the time. Starts off very spacious, very lush, lyrical. If you know his style, his keyboard style, very distinctive, very melodic, orchestral. In this case, more maybe even the symphonic side. Not too grandiose as some of the later stuff had become, but he's an all-time favorite of mine since first really hearing his music in around 1990 from the Blade Runner soundtrack. But on here before that, again, it had a very wistful, airy quality. This one, and I believe the intro was actually used for Carl Sagan's Cosmos way back when. Now, the record, as opposed to the CD, of course, you have the 2 sides. The first side is very much one way, and the second side definitely goes into different territory. So that way, if you were to find the CD first, there would be no way to break it up because it's all one continuous piece. But the second piece, the shorter one, definitely starts off. It starts off, to me, it's almost like this kind of psychedelic carnival jam. Instead of a guitar, you have the synthesizer playing almost like a electric guitar part, with the wah-wah, only doing it on the keyboards. Yeah, very, very playful, whimsical, very bouncy, but it does have that kind of psychedelic, almost like the old kind of exploitation films of the 60s, where you have the part, like Dragnet, where they're having the party and then the cops come in to bust them. It kind of has that feel to it, but kind of mixed in, with kind of a carnival atmosphere. And then as the piece goes on the second side, it goes into some experimentation on, sounds like prepared piano, playing directly on the strings, but doing it very kind of minimally, and I don't like to use the word abstract, but kind of along those lines. If you know his Invisible Connections, it kind of goes something similar to that. And then as the piece goes, it kind of gradually gets more consonant, and the melody comes back in, and kind of ends the way it began. Very lush, kind of orchestral, almost kind of like you're sailing off from the island slowly into the distance. But again, it has that kind of wistful and yearning, melancholy feel. But absolutely beautiful. From revisiting, I hadn't listened to it in quite a while, and it's going up, I'd say, higher and higher on my on my list. It took me a while before I got into his really early stuff, in the early to mid 70s. It was more later 70s and onwards. But in recent years, I'm appreciating him going even further back, some of the lesser known stuff. But yeah, Vangelis, Can You Hear the Dogs Barking? From 75, also known as Ignacio. I think that was the later version that came out, was Ignacio. So whichever one you see, again, it'll be the same music. But very much recommended. Slightly lesser known, although a little more known, again from the Cosmos theme. So excellent. And next up, shifting gears somewhat, Sam Rivers, Winds of Manhattan. Another favorite artist of many years. Probably one of the first jazz people I really got into early on, upon hearing one of his early duets with Dave Holland in the mid-70s. He's probably more well known for smaller groupings, duos, trios, and quartets. Although he did have it was called a Rivby Orchestra at one time. Very large group. On here it kind of goes in the middle. This is from '83 on Black Saint. This is a kind of a mid to larger group here, and it's all woodwinds. Typically he'd have kind of a traditional trio where he would play saxophone, flute, some piano, and it'd be bass and drums, but there's no traditional rhythm section on here, bass, drums, or piano. So you just have various woodwinds, saxophones, clarinets, and nearly all the players double on flute. It's kind of a smaller orchestral feel, kind of chamber. You could hear somewhat big band leanings, but if you know his style, his playing and his composing, it's rather angular, whimsical at times, but very intense. But just has a very distinctive melody and lyricism to it. And of course, his own voice comes out when he plays. I think he had once said he listened to as many people as he could to make sure he didn't sound like them. Every player he possibly could on saxophone, and I think he managed not to sound like anyone else. I hadn't been initially familiar with the other most of the players on here, except for Steve Coleman. Jimmy Cozier sounds familiar, and Patience Higgins, baritone, sax, and flute. But if you want to hear another approach to his playing and composing, this is might be one of his lesser known pieces. And the titles are very much, he's known for these kind of titles which allude to nature. And really, with spring beginning here, it sounds very much like that kind of theme. Lilacs, colors, spiral, matrix, revival, and blossoms. Except for the final piece, most of it you'd say is somewhat in a big band. Well, not exactly big band without rhythm, with a rhythm section, but it's big band through his particular scope. But the final piece, Blossoms, goes into more contemporary classical territory, at least the feel of it. You could imagine it being maybe like a lost Schoenberg piece, like his wind quintets, kind of similar to that. But if you want to hear another side to what he does, and again with showing more classical influences, modern classical, I would definitely recommend it. Yeah, Sam Rivers, Winds of Manhattan, Colors. Yeah, another side to him. And finally here, now we have the director in place. In place, but in a different place. Something a little different yet again. Albert Schweitzer on pipe organ, playing the music of César Franck. It's a 19th century Belgian composer. Albert Schweitzer really a Renaissance man of his time. He was a physician, a theologian, a philosopher, and musician. I'd known years ago that he had, I'd heard that he'd played organ, but wasn't aware that he had actually recorded albums until maybe a few years ago. Recorded, of course, a lot of Bach, but Caesar Franck at that time wasn't as well known to me, and definitely different than Bach. I'd say much more understated, maybe more emphasis on chords. Sounds really with both hands. The melody is more played, it's more sustained, the melodies. Maybe not as in a different pacing. For me, the imagery conjured up, like a lot of pipe organ music, would be of cathedrals, the kind of the early architecture, sort of old Gothic cathedral. Imagine kind of an aerial view from different angles. But really, what I envision a lot is like a stained glass window towards the top, a real small window, and the sunlight coming through and illuminating a pew, or very gradually shifting throughout the day. It's very dark and brooding, atmospheric, but there's just enough light coming through to not make it where it's not oppressive sounding, and enough color, contrast of colors, to where it's not too much of a downer. But it is quite dark and has kind of a bleak feel to it, kind of befitting the times, and kind of a ambivalence about. You could hear it in the playing too. So just, I don't know, something that I happen to pick this for now. But yeah, hearing his playing, revisiting his playing, he's an excellent musician, and this is I think he died in the mid-60s, so this is the 50s. Yeah, there's a date on top. Someone wrote on here, March 15th, 1958. So, yeah, Columbia Masterworks. But just a really beautiful, very beautiful, dark, haunting pipe organ. I don't know if I'd say it's, you would fit for Halloween music the way some does, like that cliche of, the pipe organ as you're into the haunted house or anything. Again, it's more like, the kind of traveling through a Gothic cathedral and just taking in the atmosphere of it all. Yeah, just very powerful stuff, and the kind of dark misterioso quality. In a way, it's kind of like the picture, the kind of with the light and the shadow. Yeah, I would recommend checking out other things he's done, Albert Schweitzer, and the music of Caesar Franck. That's how it's pronounced. Yeah, Belgian composer. So yeah, really very nice. And yeah, just going through those three. Yeah, I've been spinning a lot of CDs actually too. At some point during the week, in between playing these, during a little open stretch that I had, found some CDs in a shoebox, and I had the shoebox on the turntable as I was going through and checking those out. Something as I was going through the closet and trying to organize everything else. So yeah, I'll get further into those, and maybe the next one. The director is keeping the background music warm for me here. Robert Logan, Sculpture Galaxy, on the Project label. I had gotten this actually as this was a bonus disc. Some time ago I'd ordered one of Steve Roach's albums. I couldn't tell you which one, since I think he averages about 147 albums a year. But this is from 2011. Steve Roach had handed in himself. But yeah, I hadn't played this in a while, and you can hear some nice modern electronic, and very befitting of the label, if you know the Project label. So yeah, Robert Logan. So yeah, just wanted to come on and share some of these, and yeah, try to come on maybe this weekend and have a few more things as I go. So again, I hope you're all well and you know, doing the best we can during this time. So from the director, the producer, wherever he is, and myself, to the next one. Peace, love, and joy.